Star Wars Rebels Season 4, Episodes 3 and 4, In the Name of the Rebellion. Now, this episode I would say was definitely, the beginning of going directly into Rogue One. We have Yavin 4 being officially introduced as the team is reuniting. So I thought that was cool, but they go to Yavin 4. Of course, they bring back Mon Mothma, Bail Organa. And then we have Saw Gerrera. Of course, he shows up going into officially, well, technically, I guess Mon Mothma was in there too for Rogue One. But going into kind of character specific to Rogue One, Saw shows up. They make a reference to Kenning towards the end of the episode after everything kind of goes crazy. They have the Kyber Crystal, which is the big deal of Rogue One, being able to utilize that for the Death Star. And I was like, okay, that's really cool, because I wasn't expecting that. I was like, okay, yeah, you can say names here and stuff like that, and, no big deal. But this was the story of Rogue One. The whole point was that they were stealing Kyber Crystals, and they find this gigantic Kyber Crystal. And I was like, I love that that's a part of the story. The whole thing was a mini version of Rogue One without kind of the grand scale, at the ending of the film. But I love that. We had a Death Trooper in here as well, which I don't know how I missed this during the actual movie, but the blaster sound effects for the Death Trooper weapons are amazing to me. I love that sound effect. It's almost like it's a blaster and then it becomes hollow as the sound fades out, or it's reversed, it starts off hollow and gets louder. But either way, I was like, this sound effect is absolutely amazing. So I love that. But it was really cool. I love both these episodes. We have, like I said, of course, the entire team reuniting in this episode. Everyone gets to Yavin 4. They reunite with Hera. They reunite with Zeb. The two of them reunite with the rest of the team. And it was really cool. And we get to see them kind of deal with this mission. It's a bit of a disaster that Hera's coming back from. We get to see Wedge show up for a second there. And then, of course, Saw kind of has, this thing go off and it's this is why you guys lost. And it's because, Mon Mothma isn't really willing to do some of the dirtier things, which, of course, no one likes Saw because he'll just kill innocent people. Even... it's even said when she's arguing with him, it's you would just kill innocents if they're involved, or, if you think they're involved, or if they're just in the way, you just blast through to get to the enemy and, get to the end goal. And so, of course, they have the argument. She kind of has the droid shut off and everything. And so we have Hera, Kanan, Ezra, and Sabine, as well as Chopper. They go on this, but now that I think about that, it was weird that Zeb didn't really have much in this episode, because he was technically on the ship. If I remember, he was on the ship when they were doing that whole mission, but it was you only really ever saw Kanan and Hera when they were, doing the mission, because they were having their moments where Hera was dealing with some of the personal stuff, whereas it was Saw's way up here with the recklessness, and then right under, well, not right under, but below him, out of the characters at least, was definitely Ezra, and then under that was Hera, because she had just come off of this mission that failed, and she's like, man, this, us basically making a little bit of a communication block, or kind of jump off point with this satellite isn't going to hurt them. We should destroy this satellite and damage the Empire. And that's what she wanted, because she was in such a painful position after coming off of this failure of a mission. And I kind of like how they scaled that a little bit, where it's that's where she's at, and Ezra is always kind of right in between, and he's of course dealing with the whole fact that his home planet is still kind of just left out there, and that's where they have the moment with him and Mon Mothma. And she's like, well, look at all these planets, all these places, where do we truly start? We have to kind of just go, in a sense, we kind of just have to go with the flow. Whatever comes up now and what we know is going to work, that's kind of what we have to do, because there's so many places. Even if we do have our own personal attachments, it's the rebellion is for all, that sort of thing. So I thought that was pretty cool. But as they go through the mission, it was a complete disaster, I would have to say. The first half of this episode, or I guess the first part of this two-part little story here, was a disaster for them. They screwed up so bad during that mission. They go in with the jets and stuff, and at first it's okay, this isn't too bad. And then the Star Destroyer comes in, and it's just okay, Chopper already had it blocked off, so there was no communication getting through whatsoever. So it's well, we need to patch him through right now. And it's just don't worry, I got an idea. And he does his accent and everything, and the dude knew who it was, or he didn't know it was Ezra, but he knew it was something that was wrong. He was who is this? And Ezra was I'm Brom Titus. And he's well, that's wrong, because I'm Brom Titus. And I was well, there goes the whole freaking mission. And then the satellite starts moving, and they fall down down the curve until it ultimately ends up stopping. And I love this scene where it's just slowly coming down, and he's just looking what is that? And he can see them sliding down this giant satellite, and they hit the edge, And then Ezra kind of just looks at him and it's just like, he's waving. And I love that they did that twice, because they did it at the end of the second episode as well. And Sabine was just like, what is he doing? But during the first one, I loved it. She just hits him like, what are you doing? Like, don't wave at the enemy. Like, we're busted. This is super bad. So, of course, they go through their whole disaster. They end up finding some stormtroopers. There were 2 parts in here. I think they were both in the first episode. But there were 2 parts where they had some scream sound effects that were the funniest thing. Actually, no. It was one for each. The first one was in the first part, where they were fighting, and then the satellite slid again after they were like shooting them up and stuff and starting once they decided like, all right, well, we have to pull the satellite because we're busted, we should at least do something. So after all that was said and done, and Sabine was setting like the small detonators, and they slide to the edge, they're able to hold on, and the stormtroopers start to fall. And I think it was like the 3rd guy that fell, but the sound effect, it was just so funny to me, where he was just like, ah! And it was just like, it was just like so high pitched and loud, and it was the funniest thing. And they did it again in the second part when Sabine and Ezra, and I'm pretty sure Saw was there as well, when they took out the 3 stormtroopers, and Ezra, he like jumped off the walls and he like tackled the 3rd dude, and the sound effect was insane. And it was a different sound effect, but it was like this crazy loud, like high pitched noise. And I was like, that is just so funny that they chose to do that. But it made me laugh really hard, because it's, normally it's just like whoa, or like and it's just like, someone freaking out. But this is like legitimately high pitched screams, and it just made me laugh like crazy. So I love both those moments. But of course, in the first part, everything's kind of a complete disaster for them, and then Saw comes in. It's like, hey, you guys need a ride. He drops giant freaking canisters. They were put like little, some people were dropping like these little tiny detonators like in a line, and he comes in and it's just like 4 tankers just put together, and it's just like, all right, I think you guys need a ride. You should probably decide real quick, because these are on a short fuse. So of course they hop on the ship, and they completely destroy that thing. Like, it was a huge explosion. I thought it would be like, okay, it's gonna blow up. I figured it would be big because it was 4 of them, but I mean, and it's a giant satellite too, so it makes sense that the explosion needs to be big. But it was just like, that almost looked like a building exploded. Like, it was huge. The explosion was insane. So of course, Ezra and Sabine end up with Saw, and then ultimately they end up taking off because he believes that he has some intel, and it's like, all right, well, we gotta go. And ultimately, they end up going, because it's like, technically he's not one of the bad guys. It's just, it's a bit of an issue that they're going with him. And of course, that ends up falling apart because he's super dark, and that's where we get some of the really cool elements. And that's where it's like, it really goes kind of Rogue One in the second part, because the first part is like, the team's finally back together, they go on the Ghost and do a mission. And then part 2 is like full on Rogue One, and that's where the Death Trooper comes in, and that's where they have the reference to getting towards the end. And Saw, he doesn't know it, but of course he's on the right track, where he's like, I know they have some sort of like insane mega weapon or something, and they just don't know what it is yet. But of course he's right, because that's what the kyber crystals are for, and it's to power the laser of the Death Star. And I thought that was really cool. I was like, okay, this is interesting to watch him on these early journeys going into Rogue One. And I'm curious what's going to happen, because once again they mentioned Jedha. That was one of the things, of course, that's in Rogue One, and that's actually where Saw Gerrera's character is, if I remember right, in the film. So it does make me wonder, like, what's going to happen to his character. Like, are they even going to show it where he has, like, the respirator stuff? I guess I never even looked. I would assume, I feel like he doesn't have the robotic leg. Yeah, he's got regular legs and 2 regular arms, so I don't know if they're going to show that in the show, but something has to happen to him, because he was all messed up in the Rogue One movie. So there's going to be a moment, and because, of course it's not shown in the film, I have to assume we're going to see it in one of these episodes where Saw's going to make his return, and it's like, hey, this is, to help stop the Empire or whatever, and that's going to backfire. Like, him being kind of a douchebag and just being like, whatever, innocent people, which he even does in this episode. Like, oh, yeah, he was mad when it was civilians. It was like, I thought it was going to be weapons, and he was pissed off that they went on a rescue mission, and Ezra and Sabine are like, well, we can still help them, and he's just like, for what? Like, I don't care about them. I want to stop the Empire, because for him, everything that doesn't stop the Empire is just wasted time, even if it's saving, civilian lives. So, I feel like they have to show it in this final season, what mission he goes on that, like, almost blows him apart, takes out his leg. He may have had both arms. Maybe it was just his leg that was messed up, but, he has, like, the respirator thing to breathe, and he's, all armored up. So, it definitely makes me wonder what we're going to see from his character by the time we hit the end of this season, because he's going to be messed up. Like, something has to happen, And since we haven't seen it yet, unless he, like I said, already has the robot arm or the robot leg, but even with that, I know he doesn't have the respirator, because that's like the whole thing of Rogue One, is like every couple of sentences he's just like, and then he can talk. So we haven't seen him do that at all, so I know he's not that messed up. So there's something that's going to happen with this character this season, and I'm curious how dark it's going to get, because the thing with Rebels is that it's never gotten as deep and crazy as Clone Wars has, where some of those Clone Wars episodes are like TB-14, and I think there are some that are like TVMA, like they're very specific Clone Wars episodes where it's like they're chopping people up, and it's like, all right, fair warning, not a kids episode, but this is, you know, it's Disney Star Wars now. It's always going to be, you know, 7 and up, that sort of thing. So I am curious how that's going to play out. It should just be an explosion and that'll be fine, but I'm excited to see what mission that is and how that's going to affect the characters when it's like, this is everything that Saw, you know, is about, and then he finally gets hurt in that moment, and maybe like Ezra will learn from it, because he's like the one that's closest to feeling the same way as Saw. But go through the episode, like I said, he's kind of being a dick the whole way through, doesn't care about rescuing any of the civilians. Chopper has some funny stuff with the civilians, of the prisoners. I thought that was pretty funny, and he like hated the one dude who was like, you know, you're not really good at helping, and he's like, I'm probably just going to go back. Like at the end of the episode when they're trying to steal the ship, he's like, I'm just going to go back, and he has to like headbutt the dude, and it was super funny. He does his little spin thing where he knocks the guy out. They even had him do like some martial arts stuff with the noise and sound effects. I love that. But as they're going through, of course, after finding the prisoners, Ezra hears the singing from the Kyber crystal again, and that's how they ultimately end up finding it, dealing with the Death Trooper and stuff like that. And I thought it was cool. I love watching them go through this ship, and it's like, all right, we don't really know what's going on, because at first they thought Saul was just completely incorrect about the intel he had. It's like, it's just a cargo ship, and then some extra things started to, you know, pile on, where it's like, okay, this part's restricted, and that's how they found the prisoners. But it's like, oh, the singing came up before they found the prisoners, and then it happened again, and that's how they got like the real secret behind what the Empire was transporting, and that was, of course, this ginormous Kyber crystal. So I thought it was great. Naturally, things fall apart. The Kyber crystal ends up being you know, sent unstable, because like this, I think it was encased in carbonite. I'm pretty sure that's what that was supposed to be, because it was a giant block, and when they shot it and it messed up the way it looked when it eroded, I was like, oh, it's, you know, it's kryptonite. This is dumb, because kryptonite, I'm sure, can be used for more than humans, because it technically kills people. But the first thing I thought, of course, was like, oh, they're transporting a person, like someone was encased in carbonite, because naturally when I think carbonite, I think Han Solo. But you know, even in Empire Strikes Back, they say like that could kill someone, so that's not the normal way to transport anybody. But that's what I'm so used to. That was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, oh, it's carbonite, like somebody's in there. I was like, that didn't really make sense. But I'm pretty sure that was carbonite based on the way it looked, and they had it encased for, you know, stability, so it couldn't shake around. It's basically the Star Wars version. It's like the slightly more stable Star Wars version of nitroglycerin. It was like, can't shoot, definitely don't shoot it, because it'll just absorb energy and shoot it out in lightning arcs and stuff, which was actually kind of cool at the end, where like it actually electrocutes people. They're kind of 2 for 2 now with people dying from electrocution, or at least being wounded by lightning. But I thought that was a cool moment where they're trapped like in this small little engine room, and then towards the end, when so I was like, all right, well, I'll see you guys if you want to, you know, stay here and be, you know, caught in this massive explosion. Good luck with that. So he takes off. The part where Ezra has like, he blocks one of the bolts of lightning with his lightsaber. I thought that was cool. It definitely made me think of like, you know, remember Palpatine stuff when people were blocking his lightning. So that was definitely fun to watch. And ultimately, of course, they end up stealing the ship. And I love the way they played out, because with them stealing an Imperial ship, they fly towards the Star Destroyer, because like, we don't have enough time to, you know, go into hyperspeed. So I'm going to put some distance, I'm going to put the Star Destroyer between us and this insanely massive explosion. And when Sabine like flies the ship over the Star Destroyer, the guy was like, wasn't that the captain? What is she doing? So for some reason that really made me laugh. And then the other person was like, you know, we're reading a huge energy spike, and he's just like, oh no. And of course the Kyber crystal explodes as the Star Destroyer is going towards it. And once again, huge freaking explosion. Now, like I said, with the satellite thing, I was like, okay, I understand that. It's a satellite, it has to be huge. He dropped like, basically, I think it was like 3 of those things, or maybe even 4. So it was either 12 or 16 insanely, you know, large explosives. So it was like, all right, I didn't think that Kyber crystal would blow up that big, because it blew up, and of course it destroyed the ship it was in. I was like, that's no surprise. But I thought it just like, I thought it was gonna be like a power surge that would like wipe out the Star Destroyer. It like eroded. I think like the front half of the Star Destroyer was destroyed, and then the whole thing actually still continued to blow up because the Star Destroyer itself exploded, and then it was still technically the Kyber crystal explosion, and it was going even further, and it hits the back of the ship. And fortunately, they survived because they put everything into shields, but it wipes out like everything on the ship. So they're floating for a little bit, and then of course they get picked up, and that's pretty much the end of the episode, where they have to wonder, what if Saw is right? What if the Empire already has a weapon to win the war that most rebels don't even believe has actually begun? And I thought that was actually a really great line. I was like, wow, I never looked at it that way. Where, you know, this is really, you know, going from the prequels right up until, you know, I guess A New Hope technically, or I guess really Rogue One was like, you know, before the first film. Is like, a lot of people didn't realize exactly what was going on. Like, it was, you know, a battle, but a lot of people were like, oh, you know, we're all across the galaxy, planets are taking over, it sucks. But then it's like, yeah, there's the Death Star, like that is the ultimate weapon, and that's basically, you know, like exactly what Ezra said is pretty much what it was. It was like the Empire has their weapon for the end game before the other side even realizes that there's a beginning to the game. And I was like, that is actually a really great line. So I love the way it ended, where, you know, they don't really know exactly where things are headed. And it's like, what if Saul is right? What if there's, you know, like this giant Kyber crystal? What if the Empire does already have something set up, and that's, you know, that final component? So love the way it ended, but ultimately 2 great episodes. I'm pretty sure this is how the whole season is playing out, so I don't know, unfortunately I don't know exactly what that means as far as length in weeks, because I think, if I remember right, the show typically does hit around 20 episodes, so we might get like, you know, 10 weeks worth, and then sadly we'll be done with Star Wars Rebels. But I'm pretty sure that's how it's playing out. Like, every single thing is going to be a 2-part, even, you know, going into like the last 2 episodes of the series. So that's kind of cool, because you get an hour every week. But then it's one of those sad things where it's like, they only ever do that for final seasons of TV shows. Like, if it's a half-hour show, the only time they ever put out, you know, double episodes every week is when it's like, all right, well, it's ending anyway, just go ahead. That's the only time that ever happens, and it's always super sad. I'm like, I love this. But then it's like, it's just getting, you know, closer to the actual, you know, finale, series finale, and it's just like, man, I almost wouldn't mind if it was stretched out a little bit longer just so we have it. But, you know, it is what it is, and I'm still enjoying it for sure. Of course, I would love to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And of course, a big part of this season is that it is going to be going into Rogue One, and, you know, naturally that goes into A New Hope. So I would love to know where you guys think things are headed as far as the connections between the Rogue One characters and our Star Wars Rebels characters. Do you believe we'll see some of the other characters from the film show up? If anything, odds are we'll probably only get to actually see, I would say, K2SO and Cassian. They're the only ones that were actually on the planet at the time. Other than that, it was Jin, who's arrested, Donnie Yen's character and his buddy, like the guy who practiced being a Jedi, and his buddy with like the giant Gatling gun. Actually, that might be it. Oh, and the dude who betrayed the Empire. So, like, none of that happened until the movie. So there are only 2 characters we could see anyway, unless they do, like, some, you know, kind of messing around with it type of stuff where they end up meeting characters, you know, at random or something. But other than that, I think the only 2 we could even actually see this season are going to end up being Cassian and K2SO. But that's my theory on it. They can kind of do whatever they want. It might even go beyond, or, you know, into, you know, actually into Rogue One, and we get to see them interact with some of these characters before the ghost, you know, goes off to do other missions, and then joins them during that final mission, because they're in the movie. I think I mentioned that before, but at least the ship is. The ghost itself, and I would assume Hera as the pilot, they are actually in that final fight sequence, and Chopper is on the base during the film. If you haven't seen that, you can just obviously go on YouTube, look up the references. They are in there. They say Hera's name, they say her last name, they say Syndulla. And then Chopper's in the background of one of the shots. So it's going to get there at some point, but we'll love to know your theories on how they're going to weave in the characters and what we're going to see from the Rogue One storyline. I totally forgot about Saw while I was thinking about the other characters that we haven't seen yet, but obviously Saw will make his return. Like I said, that mission, wherever it fails, where he gets like all the robotic stuff implanted on him, I assume we'll see that in this show. But we'll love to know your theories on what we may or may not see, who we may or may not see, and of course I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.